at $55 silver, 3,450 gold. I think that took a lot of people by surprise, and I think there was a lot of traders, a lot of big funds out there that were just offside, and they had to have a correction. We already know that the silver's been in deficit for 5 years now. So, you just can't continually run in a deficit in the physical market and not have it show up in the paper market. And that's what we're seeing. We need this metal. And that's why I'm a triple digit silver guy. I came up with that phrase back in 2011, 2012. I was the first to say it. I was criticized for almost 15 years for coming up with that phrase. I was wrong because silver went down to $12, but I didn't put a timeline on it. I will, my timeline is out in the future because I'm a long-term investor. I don't care about these daily fluctuations. It's irrelevant. I play a long game. I think we're going to see $5,000 on gold and $100 silver.
The gold and silver markets continue to shock traders worldwide, with gold recently holding above $4,000 an ounce and silver reclaiming the $48 level. Investors are witnessing renewed energy across precious metals amid rising inflation fears and global debt concerns. Market data shows silver's physical demand outpacing supply for the 5th consecutive year, a clear signal that major price moves could be on the horizon. KeithNeumeyer, CEO of First Majestic Silver and one of the most recognized figures in the mining world, shares his bold outlook on where silver is headed. Known as the man who coined the term triple-digit silver, Neumeyer believes the ongoing physical deficit and increasing industrial demand will inevitably push prices toward $100 per ounce. Despite critics, his long-term conviction remains stronger than ever, seeing these market pullbacks as temporary noise in a much larger bullish story. Now, we present the clips from KeithNeumeyer's interview. Before we continue to discuss this, please subscribe to our channel and activate the bell icon for timely updates. Thank you and enjoy the video.
The price has also, obviously we were on that road to $50 and we've come down. But look, silver price has done fantastic, right? Your thoughts, what were you thinking during that run-up?
I was a little surprised it happened so quickly, and it did make me nervous. I don't think parabolic moves are in anything, whether it's a stock or whether it's a commodity. It doesn't really matter. Every kind of major move like that, it tells you there's something changing in the market for sure. I think it's signaling something about the future. But it did get a little bit ahead of itself, and I was, questioning, where is the top going to be? And I listened to all the same people you probably listen to, and people calling for $60, $70 and so on and so forth. But no one has a crystal ball. But it had to stop, and it did stop, and then it hit close to $55, which is kind of nice to see. And our stock was doing well. The whole mining sector was doing well. Gold's 4,400, almost 4,500. So the whole mining sector lit up and put a lot of smile on a lot of people's faces, like myself, who've been in this bear market since 2012, 2011, 2012. We had a bit of a blip in 2016 and another blip in 2020, but those are short-term blips. But I think things are changing now. You've got the central banks buying gold now, and they weren't there 10 years ago. You now got the market waking up to the industrial needs for silver. So there's now a whole set of new buyers coming into the precious metals market, which didn't exist in the last bull market. And I think that what we've seen in the last 2 months is a signal of the future. At $55 silver, 3,450 gold, I think that took a lot of people by surprise. And I think there was a lot of traders, a lot of big funds out there that were just offside, and they had to have a correction. So, they wait for the right timing. And look, buying does get exhausted at some point. In a bull market, people just get tired, and then the buying ends. And that's what we've seen happen. It ended, and now the market needs to consolidate. And usually when you see a parabolic move like that, to see a 15 to 20% correction is normal. We hope to see that. I think we're about 15% already as of today. We're down about 15%, and who knows where the bottom is, but it's going to settle. It'll find a level wherever that level is, and then it'll sit there for 2-3 months, and I think the bull market will resume. I play a long game. I think we're going to see $5,000 on gold and $100 silver. So why would I, be trading this market? I'll stay long Silver is a bit of a clunky metal, so it's hard to move around. And there was a lot of metal, gold, and silver moved to the United States as a result of the tariff issues. And I guess in hindsight, maybe some of that metal shouldn't have moved, but in fact, it had to move back. So the London market is really where all the price fixing occurs, and it's a market that needs that metal, and it was obviously very stressed, and they needed the metal back. And I saw some stats just I think yesterday that India was a huge consumer of silver this past month, and we know China is now. I just saw this morning actually that China is stopping silver deliveries outside of the country, and so we need this metal, and that's why I'm a triple digit silver guy. I came up with that phrase back in 2011, 2012. I was the first to say it. I was criticized for almost 15 years for coming up with that phrase. I was wrong because silver went down to $12, but I didn't put a timeline on it. I will. My timeline is out in the future because I'm a long-term investor. I don't care about these daily fluctuations. It's irrelevant to me. I look at the big picture, the supply-demand fundamentals of this metal. If we're going to electrify the planet the way we want to electrify the planet, and governments are going this direction, nuclear power plants are being built all over the world now, which are huge consumers of silver, rebuilding electrical grids or building brand new electrical grids, in places that don't have availability for electricity. Every time you move electricity around the world, you need silver. And I think that, where was the light that really changed the market? I think when the United States put silver on the critical minerals list, I think that was a pretty important signal to the market and to the big institutions. I've come up with phrases over the last 20 years of my career calling silver a strategic metal. There's no substitute for metal or silver. I've come up with these different phrases, but for the United States government to all of a sudden say silver is critical, and that I think really changed the market a lot. China's a big producer of silver, and they're also a huge consumer of silver. So they're a very, very important player in the whole scheme of things. They produce a ton of electric cars. They produce a lot of cell phones. They produce a lot of computers. They're refrigerators, freezers, household appliances. You name it. They're just a huge engine and a huge consumer of silver. So they see it as an issue, and that's why I think they've now come out with that announcement that they're going to stop exports. Well, in a market where it's driven by paper prices, we've seen the paper prices come to the mercy of the physical market, and we trade somewhere around 2 billion ounces of silver per day between London and Shanghai and Chicago. That's a lot of silver in one day to trade, considering the miners only produce, around 850 million ounces a year. So, that's pretty crazy leverage. So, all of a sudden, the paper market gets untwinged or whatever, however you want to say it. All of a sudden, they have to get the metal because they need some metal to back up all their paper contracts. And it's not the only time we've seen it. We've seen it in the nickel market previously. We've seen it in other markets as well. And we saw it in the silver market. We saw it in the silver market in 2011. I remember when, that whole move from, low 40s to almost 50, that was all short covering. We didn't see a huge short cover this time around. It was more physically driven this time around, which is interesting. I think that tells you that there's a huge physical shortage in the market, but that shows up in all the stats. We already know that the silver has been in deficit for 5 years now. So, you just can't continually run in a deficit in the physical market and not have it show up in the paper market. And that's what we're seeing. The number fluctuates between 150 and 250 million ounces a year of physical shortages. And that's been going on consistently for the last 5 years, as I said. Doesn't look like this year's any different. Doesn't look like next year's going to be any different. Like, where's the silver going to come from? As a human race, if we're going to be consuming 1.2 to 1.4 billion ounces of silver in industry, well, that's including investment as well, including ETFs. But how can the miners ever fill that deficit? It's just not going to happen in this current price environment.
The signs are becoming impossible to ignore. Central banks continue to quietly accumulate gold, industrial silver demand is at record highs, and the global supply chain remains under heavy pressure. Every correction we see now could be the setup for the next leg higher, the kind that catches retail traders completely off guard. As investors shift from paper promises to physical metals, the real value of gold and silver will begin to speak for itself. History always rewards those who prepare early, not those who wait for headlines to confirm what's already happened. KeithNeumeyer's conviction echoes what many seasoned investors are beginning to realize, that patience and perspective are everything in this game. Whether it's 100 silver dollars or 5,000 gold dollars, the trend is clear. The world is waking up to sound money once again. So stay informed, stay ahead, and remember, knowledge is your most valuable asset in uncertain times. If you enjoyed this insight, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more hard-hitting analysis and updates from the gold and silver frontier. The next breakout could come when you least expect it, so be ready.